We are now at a stage where we are building our internal ICF walls, and these are for the stairs that I've mentioned in previous videos. There has been a lot of comments regarding the use of rebar in our build, predominantly its placement within the blocks. The stair walls are the first aspect of our build, which include rebar that is cast into the concrete slab and run internally in the stair wall blocks. Hopefully watching this video, it'll give you a good idea of how to go about casting rebar into a reinforced concrete slab, and then how to use an ICF block to form internal walls. So without further ado, let's get into it. Here's me using the farm's 1960s Massey 165 to move some rebar around. Although I am familiar with driving machinery, there is certainly a knack to driving this tractor, and I had to take a lesson from Dad before I felt comfortable, and you'll probably see from my face the concentration is on point. The rebar you're seeing here is what our structural engineer has specified that we'll use for some of the aspects of our build. There is some great big 32mm bar which will be used to create the cantilever cages. There is also bent sections to help tie in rebar cages together. We will certainly be including a video on how we go about building those cages, so you shan't miss out. As you can see here, this is the 30th of June when we're doing our sub base, and we're having to consider the location of our stair walls from this point. The positioning is crucial because we've actually got a lot of our mains drainage runs coming up on the inside of that left hand side stair wall. So if we didn't start considering the location of the stairs from this point, it was going to give us hardships later on. We basically need to get this hallway shooting straight towards Ellie, all the walls perfectly in line. Once you've got your string lines up, you can then place your 365 block in a position so you will always have the concrete core element to cut into, where you'll butt the 170 into that. Okay.
Good job.
Yeah, right, this will complete the effect.
Yeah. Ta-da! There we go. Amazing. Hey.
Laundry.
After drilling into your slab, you really need to make sure those holes are cleaned out, ready for the resin to be put in.
Rock and load.
A lot of chemical anchor resins are two parts, a solution and like a hardener. So prior to filling the holes, you want to make sure you've primed your gun. So here I am making sure that we've got a beautiful raspberry jam coming out the end. That way then I know that the two parts have mixed correctly.
Wait.
Yeah.
With the rebar in, it's now time to fix 2 pieces of 4x2 for each wall, and these are basically forming a jig for you to butt your 170s into. You just need to be mindful where you put the screw positions, as we were quite often hitting a join line between 2 blocks, so you're not going to get a decent fixing. A little bit more attention was needed on this side due to the angled cut blocks. Once you've got your 2 pieces of 4x2 up, you then want to mark out the slot that you're then going to cut out the inner leaf of your 365 blocks. As you may have seen before, the blocks do cut relatively easily. Ecobrix show cutting this slot out using an alligator saw, much like when you cut the blocks down to length. I found using a circular saw to do this bit a lot more controllable, and through more luck than judgment, my DeWalt saw base plate, when butted up against one of the 4x2 timbers, the cut line marked perfectly with my scribe line on the inner leaf of the blocks. This side just needed finishing off with a handsaw because of how close we had to be to the middle web of the inside of the block. This is why it's worth spending the time on that first course block, getting the positioning right. Now we have a completely uninterrupted channel of concrete to flow into our 170s. This was harder to achieve on the other side where we've got the angled blocks, but we managed to get it as close as possible to that middle web without interrupting it. When it came to the day of putting the first course of 170s down, this was a day where I was just struggling to get things right. And one of the first issues I had was I'd made my muck for my first course, my 4:1 mix, far too wet. Any keen brickie will be able to see this straight away. The problem of the muck being too wet is that every time I tried to level the next block, it would end up knocking the block butted up to it down and sending that out of level. Rather than just accepting that it was too wet the first time round, I persisted another 2 times until eventually I chucked it all back in the mixer and stiffened it up.
Yeah, the muck's better.
I cannot stress enough, you've got to get the muck right. Once I was a little bit like Goldilocks and got it just right, the blocks were a pleasure to lay. I haven't mentioned this in our first Ecobrix video, but if you're a bricklaying novice like myself, I actually found it a lot easier not to feather your mortar bed. This just allows you a lot more room for tapping them nice and square and level, although it does mean you do have a bit to clean up afterwards. Another mistake I'd made on the day that I was laying this first course down is not cutting the end webbing out of the 170 block. Cutting this end webbing out allows for better concrete flow into the blocks.
Ta-da. Wow. That is ridiculous.
That worked well.
Before we could start putting on the next courses of 170s, we were going to have to extend the 16mm rebar that we'd cast in our slab. So we just referred to our structural engineer's drawings, where he's kindly put a bar mark. So this is bar mark 301, which corresponds to the bending schedule. So all that barring is labelled as you see here. Those 16mm bars are then wire tied to the 16mm bar that we cast in the slab earlier on in the video. This was good practice in learning how to tie the bar together in preparation for our future elements of the build. I think it's easier to probably cut the back out of it while... You want to maintain a brick bond much like you do with the exterior walls, and with the 170s the face blocks can be cut in half.
And then we need a half block, but keep. Oh yeah, that looks.
And their internal webbing contain a male and a female, so you can utilise both parts.
Does it feel?
It feels alright.
Amazing. Female end, and then we've used the half block and got the male end. Wow.
That worked quite well.
Ellie and I resisted the urge into making it into a competition into who could build their stair walls up to 6 courses the quickest. The length of our stair walls doesn't equate to full block lengths. This isn't an issue, but it does mean you need to think about where you position your cut blocks. And this was an oversight for both Ellie and I on our first 2 courses. And this is the point that I realise we've got to do something different. And in the end, the solution was fairly simple. Every other course incorporated 1 block cut down to length, followed by 2 blocks cut to length. It was at this point we realised we'd missed another key step in that we should have built a CLS frame to border the ends of these walls to the wall opposite.
And you have to squint, safety squint,
Safety squint.
because all the slits go in your eyes if you...
So once Ellie got the 2 end blocks over, we set to work and knocked up 2 CLS frameworks. These are made exactly the same as the window openings that I've shown in a previous video. And once again, to make sure these were all at the same height, we utilised our rotary builder's level and set a datum off one of the windows we've already previously installed to make sure we get these frames at exactly the right height.
1 mil.
Yeah.
Bit. Yeah, that is literally saying with Bob on.
The reason why we need to get these 2 frameworks at exactly the same height is that above them we'll be running 170 face blocks where we'll build an internal rebar cage that will be cast over that opening. That rebar cage is basically forming a concrete beam that is helping to tie in the 2 sides of our build.
Bob on. Perfect.
Ellie had to leave for work that afternoon, so it just left me finishing off the last few courses. Can anyone tell me at what point did I realise that I'd actually put the blocks in facing the wrong way? So in 2 days, we've managed to build our stairs up to 6 courses ready for our first pour. We are really happy with how they've turned out and are really going to turn our stairs into what we feel will be quite a feature. As always, we hope that you've enjoyed this video and found it interesting. Our next video is going to be how we've installed our sway frame and hidden it within our ICF blocks.